NASCAR's trash point system creates drama but doesn't reward a champion. What that has to do with Talladega coming up next. What is going on, everybody? If I haven't earned your subscription, hopefully today is the day that I will earn that subscription. All right, NASCAR's point system is something I'm not a fan of. If you've been watching the show for a while, you know that, but it is a trash point system. It does nothing but create fake drama and excitement for the fans, but it doesn't actually reward a real champion. To reward a real champion, you have to go through an entire season of cumulative points, just like F1 and just about literally every other motorsport does. But what it does do is create these fake drama situations where at each specific cutoff point in the season, you have some type of drama. And in the regular season, it creates drama because if you win a race, you are in that playoff hunt and you are in those cutoff sections. And so what does that have to do with Talladega? Well, I'm going to tell you right now. Since its inception in 1969, Talladega has had 12 first-time winners. Those winners include Richard Brickhouse, Dick Brooks, Lenny Pond, Ron Bouchard, Bobby Hillin, Davey Allison, Phil Parsons, Ken Schrader, Brian Vickers, Brad Keselowski, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., and Bubba Wallace most recently. So with that in mind, this is the race for the underfunded teams, the guys that are having terrible seasons, to punch their ticket for the playoffs with a win. This is the one track where equipment is somewhat equalized and anybody has a shot. And if you think about it that way, this is where you've got your best chance to completely ruin NASCAR's playoff system, because every year I pray or hope that a driver who is an underfunded driver or or is just having a bad season wins a race like this and gets into the playoffs and just completely ruins it for everybody. Austin Dillon almost did it in 2020. He's probably the closest one that's done it in Cup, but in Xfinity, we've seen guys like Daniel Hemrick who didn't win a race at all until the final race. He went and ruined it for the Xfinity Series where Austin Cindric probably should have been your champion that year. He won a ton of races, and if it was a cumulative deal, it wouldn't even have been close. It would have been him and AJ Allmendinger. So I always hope that happens in Cup because I want NASCAR's terrible point system to eventually bite them in the butt. But that being said, let's take a look at who could possibly be one of these upset drivers. So let's look at some past winners who are currently basically not in the top 16 in points. Brad Keselowski has a bunch of wins at Talladega. He is currently sitting 30th in points, and why that is significant, well, you have to be 30th in points to make the playoffs, even with a win. Remember, that's the old Kyle Busch rule. So Brad Keselowski, with his 11th place finish at Bristol on the dirt, has put himself up to 30th place, overcoming that huge penalty that he suffered or incurred earlier in the season. So if he is able to win at Talladega, Brad Keselowski would be in the playoffs. So that is one guy that can do it. Ricky Stenhouse is another guy. He has a couple of Talladega wins, if I'm not mistaken. He is currently 29th in points. Justin Haley currently sits 25th in points. You remember he won that rain-shortened race when Kurt Busch inexplicably went into the pits. But Justin Haley is a pretty good plate driver, currently 25th in points. Michael McDowell, last year's Daytona 500 winner. He is currently 26th in points. We know he can get it done at plate tracks, obviously. And these guys are not winners, but they do run good at these plate tracks. Harrison Burton, remember at Daytona, he had a really, really fast car. In my opinion, probably had the fastest car and was going to be a threat if he didn't get caught up in some of those, in one of those wrecks there. Corey LaJoie always maximizes his equipment at these tracks. And at 31st in points, he would have to bump himself up one position, I believe. Corey LaJoie, if he can pull it off and get this win, I think he could make, a mess of the playoffs possibly if they get some funding and some momentum going in the right direction. So those are the guys who I would like to see possibly disrupt the system and get into the playoffs with a win here. Of course, also there are some other guys that are sitting right there at the cutoff line, the Suarez's, the Austin Dillons, the Ty Dillons, the Eric Joneses of the world who they're already running pretty good. Kurt Busch is in that mix too. He's actually out of the playoffs right now. But if those guys can get a win, obviously they can disrupt it, but they wouldn't be as disruptive because we know that they usually run pretty consistently anyway. If they hit a hot streak, that wouldn't be, as disruptive. But that list of guys who I mentioned earlier, if they got in there and could somehow disrupt NASCAR's point system, I think NASCAR would probably look at redoing this thing because, as we all know, NASCAR doesn't like underdogs stinking up their show. All right, well, enough of me whinging about the NASCAR point system and how I want it to be upset. Let's take a look at who Vegas thinks is going to win this thing. This is from DraftKings, obviously, and Ryan Blaney, Joey Logano, Brad Keselowski, Chase Briscoe, and Bubba Wallace are your favorites. Austin Cindric would be the fifth in there. Also, Denny Hamlin and Chase Elliott in that mix. I think all of those are good picks. Kyle Larson, he usually runs pretty bad at plate tracks because he gets caught up in wrecks. But I think just because he's a real popular pick, they have put him up there as well. But all those guys are your favorites, and plate track, anything can happen. But any of those guys, I think, would be a good, solid pick for a top 5, top 3. And definitely all of them have a chance of winning. But let's look down this list a little further at some value picks. And here are the value picks. If you really want to go out on a limb, if Greg Biffle's team gives him a car that will stay together, that is not a bad line, but so far this season they have not given him a car that will hold up, so I would stay away from anybody near Greg Biffle there. The first of those drivers down there on that list who I would think about picking would be Corey LaJoie and Daniel Hemrick. Corey LaJoie, like I said, always maximizes his equipment here, so picking him for a top 5 at plus 1,000, that is not a bad pick. Daniel Hemrick is sitting in a really good car, in that College car, so he could definitely make some noise, could steal a win, but definitely would be a good pick for your top 5 there. Noah Gragson in that Beard oil car, he is definitely a good pick as well because we know that Beard car is really fast. They only do restrictor plates, and Eric Jones is another good one. Him and Suarez both actually right there at plus 800 and plus 700 for a top 5, plus 7,000 and plus 6,000 for a win. Both of those guys could easily pull off the win. And Cole Custer, this is the type of track for a guy who is having an absolutely terrible season like Cole Custer is having to just show up and win. So all of those guys right there have to be on your radar. Of course, this is for entertainment purposes only, and I haven't hit all year, so take my advice with a grain of salt. But hopefully you enjoyed this, and if you made it this far, feel free to subscribe. If you got a comment, leave it down below. Let me know who you're picking, who you think's going to win, and other than that, thanks for your time. Peace.